The galactic court of Valerian floated in silent elegance above a glowing blue world. Massive crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling that shimmered like distant stars, and soft light moved slowly across the floor like living water. Representatives from dozens of species gathered daily in this place, each carrying the pride of their worlds and the weight of their politics. Every movement in the court was watched, judged, and remembered. Alien nobles dressed in complex armor and flowing robes filled the hall with color and motion. Some species glowed faintly with natural energy, while others used advanced technology to enhance their presence. Status mattered here. Power was displayed through voice, posture, and spectacle. Humans were new to this level of galactic politics. Many in the court believed humans were emotional, unpredictable, and physically weaker than older species. Because of this, human roles were usually small and carefully limited. That was why few noticed the silent human guard standing near the outer ring of the Queen's chamber. He stood still, hands resting calmly behind his back, eyes observing everything without appearing to stare. His uniform was simple compared to the elaborate armor worn by others. No glowing symbols marked his rank. No dramatic movements drew attention to him. Most people forgot he was there within minutes, but Queen Alira did not. From her elevated throne, she saw every detail of her court. She had ruled for centuries, and her instincts were sharp. She noticed how different guards reacted to pressure. Some shifted their weight when debates became tense. Some watched only the most important nobles. Others focused too much on appearing strong. The human did none of these things. He watched quietly, adjusting his position only when necessary. When a group of young diplomats entered nervously, he subtly moved to give them space without making them feel threatened. When a noble raised their voice, he did not react with tension, but with calm awareness. It was small, almost invisible behavior, but to the Queen, it stood out clearly. During a long diplomatic session, a dispute broke out between two alien factions. Their voices grew louder, and the air filled with rising emotion. Several guards stepped forward quickly, hands near their weapons. The human moved too, but differently. Instead of stepping toward the loudest voices, he shifted slightly toward the edges of the gathering, placing himself between the argument and a group of smaller delegates who looked uncomfortable. His movement was smooth and natural, as if he had predicted the exact moment tension would rise. The Queen leaned forward slightly, watching. The argument ended before it turned dangerous, and the session continued. Many forgot the moment had happened at all, but she remembered. After the court session ended, attendants and nobles slowly left the hall. The human guard remained at his position until the last visitor exited. Only then did he move, walking with steady steps toward a secondary corridor where guards rotated duties. Queen Alira turned toward one of her advisors. "Who is the human?" she asked quietly. Her advisor hesitated, clearly surprised by the question. "A recently assigned guard from the Human Alliance, Your Majesty. Minimal record in court service. Mostly field assignments." "Field assignments?" she repeated. "Yes. Peacekeeping operations, border security, conflict stabilization missions. Nothing prestigious." The Queen did not respond immediately. Instead, she looked back toward the empty space where the human had stood. Prestige did not interest her as much as effectiveness. Over the following days, she watched him more carefully. The court continued its endless rhythm of negotiations and debates. Delegations arrived from distant systems. Trade agreements were discussed, alliances were strengthened or questioned, and political rivals attempted to gain influence. Through all of it, the human remained quiet. Some nobles began whispering about him. "Why does he stand so still?" one asked. "Humans are strange," another replied. "Perhaps he is afraid to speak." Others laughed softly, assuming he lacked confidence. The human never reacted to these comments. He performed his duties without showing irritation or pride. One morning, a young messenger accidentally dropped a stack of data tablets near the entrance. Several guards ignored the situation, focused on scanning incoming guests. The human stepped forward, helped gather the tablets, and returned them without saying more than a few polite words. The messenger left, smiling, clearly relieved. Again the queen noticed. She began to wonder if his silence was not weakness but choice. During a private audience, she arranged for him to stand closer to her throne. It was a subtle test. The closer a guard stood to the queen, the more pressure they felt from watching eyes. Nobles analyzed every movement, searching for signs of favoritism or vulnerability. Many guards became tense under such attention. The human did not. He remained calm, gaze steady but respectful, movements precise and minimal. At one point, a noble intentionally walked too close to the queen's platform, testing security boundaries. Several guards shifted aggressively. The human simply took one step forward, blocking the path without touching or threatening the noble. His presence alone made the noble pause and redirect. No confrontation, no embarrassment, just quiet control. Queen Alira felt a spark of curiosity grow stronger. Later that day, she requested access to his full-service history. The records surprised her. The human had participated in missions known for extreme difficulty. He had served alongside multiple species, often acting as mediator during conflicts. Reports described him as calm under pressure, observant, and highly reliable. Several promotions had been offered to him. All declined. Why would someone refuse advancement? The queen found this unusual. In the court, ambition was expected. Meanwhile, the political atmosphere grew more complicated. Rumors spread of rising tensions along trade routes. Rival factions competed for influence, and hidden alliances formed behind polite smiles. Small security anomalies began appearing, nothing serious enough to trigger alarm, but enough to make experienced leaders cautious. The human seemed to notice them too. He adjusted his patrol pattern slightly, always within protocol but clearly guided by awareness rather than routine. One evening, during a formal gathering, Queen Alira observed him watching reflections in a polished surface, rather than looking directly at guests. He monitored movement without making others feel watched. It was subtle intelligence, the kind that came from experience rather than training alone. After the event, she called him forward privately. He approached with calm steps, bowing respectfully.
"You are different from the others," she said simply. "I serve the role given to me," he replied.
His voice was steady, without arrogance. "You do not seek recognition. My duty is to prevent problems, not create attention." His answers were honest, but not revealing too much. He spoke like someone who understood limits.
"Humans are often described as emotional," she said.
"We are,"
he answered.
But emotion can teach patience. The answer intrigued her. Outside the chamber, court politics continued shifting. Some nobles grew uneasy with the queen's interest in a human guard. Others dismissed it as temporary curiosity. The human returned to his position, unaware that he had become the center of quiet observation. Days passed, and the queen's curiosity deepened. She realized that while many in the court displayed power loudly, the human demonstrated strength through stillness, and in a place where ambition often caused chaos, that quiet strength began to feel rare. Unknown to most, events were already moving toward something larger, something that would soon test every assumption the court held about humanity. But for now, the silent human guard simply watched, waited, and prepared. The court of Valerian continued its endless movement, filled with voices, colors, and shifting alliances. Every day brought new visitors, new debates, and new tensions hiding behind polite smiles. While many focused on power displays and political advantage, the silent human guard remained steady at his post, watching quietly, as if he could see patterns others missed. Queen Alira found her attention returning to him more often than she expected. She had ruled long enough to recognize talent, but the human's strength was not obvious like others. It was hidden in patience, in small movements, and in choices that avoided conflict before it began. Some nobles began to notice her interest. A group of senior advisors gathered one afternoon, their voices low but serious. One of them suggested that trusting a human too closely might be unwise. Humans were new to the galactic stage, unpredictable, and still adapting to the traditions of older civilizations. The Queen listened calmly, but did not agree or disagree. Instead, she asked them to observe more carefully. Over the next few days, she placed the human guard in positions where subtle decisions mattered. During negotiations between two species known for sudden emotional reactions, she assigned him to stand near the diplomatic table rather than the outer ring. The discussion began peacefully but soon grew tense. One ambassador raised his voice, and the room filled with nervous energy. Guards shifted, preparing to intervene. The human did not move immediately. He watched the participants closely, his eyes moving between faces, hands, and small changes in posture. Then he stepped forward slightly, placing himself where both sides could see him clearly without feeling threatened. His calm presence changed the atmosphere. The raised voices lowered, just enough for reason to return. The Queen noticed the shift instantly. Later, one of her advisors admitted that the human had prevented escalation without using authority or force. He had simply adjusted the emotional balance of the room. This puzzled many aliens. Strength was usually shown through dominance, not restraint. Meanwhile, whispers spread through the court. Some believed the Queen favored the human. Others assumed he must hold secret knowledge or hidden status. A few nobles decided to test him themselves. One evening, a high-ranking noble approached him directly, speaking in a tone meant to provoke. The noble questioned human abilities, suggesting humans lacked the discipline required for palace duty. The human listened without reacting. When the noble finished, he replied politely that every species learned differently, and that his only goal was to serve effectively. The lack of confrontation frustrated the noble more than anger would have. Word of the interaction spread quickly. Many began to realize that the human did not respond to insults the way others did. He refused to play political games. Queen Alira watched all of this with growing interest. At the same time, small security anomalies continued appearing across the palace. Doors reported brief access attempts that left no trace. Communication channels experienced tiny delays. Sensors detected movement that could not be identified. Most officials dismissed these as technical errors. The human did not. He began adjusting his patrol routes again, always within official guidelines, but clearly guided by intuition. He paused longer at certain corridors, watched reflections in polished walls, and listened carefully during crowded events. One night, while standing guard near a quiet passage, he noticed a faint vibration in the floor, something too subtle for most to detect. He did not raise alarm immediately. Instead, he quietly informed a senior officer, suggesting a systems check. Engineers later discovered a hidden device placed near a maintenance hatch. It was small, harmless on its own, but capable of gathering data. The discovery caused unease throughout the court. Queen Alira summoned her advisors. Some argued the threat was minor, while others feared a larger plan. When she asked how the device had been found, they hesitated before admitting it was the human guard who noticed the anomaly. Her curiosity deepened further. She invited him for another private conversation. "You notice what others ignore," she said. He responded simply that humans survived by observing small changes. In unfamiliar environments, attention to detail meant safety. She asked if he believed the palace was in danger. "I believe someone is testing limits," he answered calmly. "Testing reactions, learning how the court responds." His words stayed with her long after he left. The political atmosphere grew heavier. Delegations arrived for a grand assembly that would determine trade rights across several systems. Tension increased as rival species competed for influence. Security became tighter, and the human was placed closer to the center of activity again. Many nobles watched him now, curious about the Queen's interest. Some still doubted him, waiting for a mistake. During one meeting, a young diplomat accidentally revealed confidential information, causing shock among the attendees. Voices rose quickly, and accusations filled the room. The human moved quietly behind the diplomat, offering silent support through presence alone. The diplomat regained composure and clarified the mistake before the situation could spiral. Afterward, several observers admitted that without his calming influence, the meeting might have collapsed. The Queen began trusting his instincts more openly. When he suggested small adjustments to guard placement or room arrangements, she approved them without hesitation. This created tension among traditional officers, who were unused to taking direction from a human. Still, results spoke louder than pride. Outside the palace, rumors of political sabotage grew stronger. Some believed rival factions planned to embarrass the Queen during the upcoming Grand Assembly. Inside the court, subtle signs continued appearing. Missing data fragments, unfamiliar faces among visitors, and unusual communication signals. The human guard felt the pattern forming, but could not yet see the full picture. One evening, while the court prepared for a major gathering, he stood near a wide balcony overlooking the city lights below. The glowing skyline reflected in his eyes as he considered everything he had observed. Only readiness. Queen Alaraya approached quietly behind him, surprising him slightly.
"You are always thinking," she said. He answered that preparation reduced the need for reaction later.
She asked him what humans valued most when facing uncertainty. He paused before answering. "We value the chance to choose wisely, even when others expect us to fail." The Queen felt something shift in her understanding. Perhaps humanity's strength was not in power or technology, but in adaptability. The ability to remain steady when others became overwhelmed. As the Grand Assembly approached, tension filled the court like a silent storm, waiting to break. Many nobles focused on political victory. Others worried about hidden threats. The human guard simply watched, knowing that the real test had not yet begun. And somewhere within the palace, unseen forces prepared their next move. The day of the Grand Assembly arrived, and the entire palace shimmered with activity. Delegates from distant star systems moved through halls lined with crystalline pillars that refracted light into hundreds of colors. The atmosphere buzzed with whispers, polite greetings, and the subtle tension of alliances being tested. Nobles in elaborate clothing walked with careful precision, displaying rank and influence at every turn. Every gesture mattered. Every glance could shift perception. The human guard stood quietly at his assigned position near the central council chamber. He had observed these ceremonies before, but never one as important as this. The stakes were high. Trade rights, territorial agreements, and political alliances would all be decided by the end of the day. A single misstep could ignite a chain reaction of conflict across multiple systems. The Queen had placed him near the assembly floor, where he could watch everything without drawing attention. His role was simple in description, but critical in function. Observe, protect, and intervene only when necessary. Unlike other guards who relied on intimidation or authority, he relied on awareness, patience, and calculated action. His calm presence went unnoticed by most, but it subtly affected the mood around him. Diplomats and nobles unconsciously adjusted their posture and tone in response to his quiet vigilance. As the first discussions began, a nervous ambassador from the system of Trevara accidentally mispronounced a key term related to a resource treaty. In most cases, such an error could lead to embarrassment or even diplomatic friction. Several guards looked ready to react, anticipating tension. The human, however, noticed the mistake immediately, but did not move toward the ambassador aggressively. Instead, he adjusted his stance subtly, positioning himself to shield both the speaker and those who might overreact. His calm and unobtrusive presence created space for the ambassador to correct the error without alarm or ridicule. The assembly continued without incident, but Queen Alira observed closely and made a mental note of his instinctive intervention. Minutes later, the assembly faced a much more serious challenge. An emissary from the rogue system of Drelk approached the podium, with the intention of using the gathering to make a provocative statement. Drelk was known for testing the limits of diplomacy and using small acts of aggression to destabilize alliances. As the emissary began speaking, subtle but coordinated signals moved through the audience. A minor distraction here, a shifting of guards there, all designed to create chaos. Most attendants were unaware that a carefully orchestrated attempt at disruption was underway. Only the human guard seemed to notice the faint irregularities. He watched the movements of every individual, noting subtle signs that something was off. A slight hesitation in a noble step, a flicker of light on a communication device, a whisper that did not belong to the discussion. These small details indicated preparation for a larger scheme. Others might have missed them entirely, attributing them to nerves or coincidence. The human guard, however, had learned to see patterns in what seemed insignificant. He adjusted his position silently, stepping slightly forward to intercept potential threats, but without creating suspicion. His awareness alone began to stabilize the situation before anyone realized it was unstable. The Drelk emissary continued, but as he tried to provoke the assembly, the human subtly shifted toward a concealed corridor. In a single movement, he caught sight of a shadowy figure attempting to bypass the main entrance. This figure carried a small device, possibly a tool for sabotage or intimidation. The human's heart rate remained calm, his mind analyzing each possible outcome. He did not panic. Instead, he calculated the most efficient action to neutralize the threat without drawing attention or causing panic among the delegates. As the shadowy figure approached the central floor, the human made his move. With precise timing, he intercepted the intruder using a combination of physical presence and silent authority. The figure froze instantly, recognizing that the human's calm and unwavering demeanor left no room for deception or aggression. The human did not strike or threaten, only positioned himself in a way that made resistance impossible. Within moments, the intruder surrendered, confused by the silent authority and controlled presence that the human embodied. No alarms were triggered. No attention was drawn to the incident. The assembly continued as if nothing had happened. Yet the queen, watching from her elevated throne, knew exactly what had transpired. She understood immediately that this human had prevented a potential catastrophe without fanfare, without violence, and without creating panic. The other nobles would not yet know the magnitude of what had occurred. Only she understood that this one human had altered the balance of the court with his awareness and self-control. The assembly progressed, but the tension had subtly shifted. Diplomats who had intended to push boundaries now moderated their language. Delegates who were previously confident in provocation hesitated, sensing the quiet but undeniable presence of authority that did not need to speak to be recognized. The human guard continued to move with precision, his eyes scanning constantly for anomalies, his posture unshakable. During a brief break, a small child accompanying a delegate wandered too close to the edge of a balcony. Several attendants noticed the danger, but the human was already there, gently guiding the child back to safety without a word. His motion was so seamless and unobtrusive that many assumed the child had simply returned on their own. Again, no one noticed the skill, the vigilance, or the timing, except the queen. When the assembly resumed, the Drelk emissary attempted another subtle provocation, using coded gestures toward several nobles. The human's eyes caught every micro-expression, every twitch of movement. He subtly moved to position himself in line with potential points of escalation. His awareness allowed him to intervene at the perfect moment, stopping the escalation before it could begin. Again, the incident passed unnoticed by most, but the queen saw the brilliance in restraint and strategic action. Hours passed, and the tension in the chamber remained high. Some species began to grow restless, expecting chaos to erupt at any moment. Guards from multiple factions began shifting uncomfortably, unsure if and when to act. The human, however, moved only when necessary, his calm consistency becoming a silent anchor for the assembly. He understood that true strength in this environment was not measured by aggression or intimidation, but by patience, observation, and the ability to act decisively when the moment demanded it. By mid-afternoon, an emergency alert briefly flashed in the control systems. A covert signal indicated the potential presence of an unauthorized device, one capable of disrupting communication or security systems. Other guards reacted with immediate concern, some approaching with heavy weapons, others freezing in indecision. The human, however, analyzed the situation calmly. He traced the source, moved with quiet precision, and neutralized the device without triggering alarms or drawing attention. The assembly continued smoothly, unaware that a serious threat had been removed. Silently, Queen Alira, observing all of this, realized that the human guard was not only protecting her physically but also preserving the political and diplomatic stability of the court. His presence was a stabilizing force that others could not replicate. While many sought recognition, status, or power, he operated with the sole purpose of ensuring safety and order. During a final session of the assembly, delegates attempted to settle territorial disputes through heated debate. Voices rose, and subtle threats surfaced in language and gesture. The human remained at his post, analyzing each movement, listening to each tone, and adjusting his position without drawing notice. His calm allowed key diplomats to maintain composure, preventing disputes from escalating into aggression. Again, his influence was invisible to the majority, yet essential. When the assembly ended, the Queen requested a private audience with the human. As he entered the chamber, she observed him without needing to speak. His demeanor remained calm, posture steady, eyes alert. He had performed multiple interventions, without violence, without drama, and without seeking recognition.
"You have done more than any of the court realizes," she said quietly.
"I only did what I am assigned to do," he replied simply. "You prevented conflicts. You protected delegates. You neutralized threats without raising alarm. This is more than service. This is strategy, awareness, and courage combined." He nodded, accepting her words without pride. His focus remained on his duty, not accolades. The Queen smiled slightly. She had seen many creatures over centuries, but this human demonstrated something extraordinary. It was not strength measured in size or energy, nor skill measured in weaponry or status. It was the ability to remain calm under pressure, to act decisively when needed, and to protect others through awareness and timing. Humanity's true power, she realized, lay in adaptability, focus, and integrity. Word of the human's actions began to circulate discreetly among key observers. Some nobles speculated on his abilities, while others remained unaware. The Queen understood that his influence was not measured by recognition, but by outcomes. The assembly had ended peacefully. Alliances were preserved, and potential crises were averted, all without drawing attention. She knew that this silent human had shaped events more profoundly than any visible display of power. Later that evening, the human stood once again near the central chamber, watching as attendants cleared the hall. His posture remained calm, movements precise. Despite the intensity of the day, his mind was clear, focused on what might come next. For him, vigilance was a continuous process, not a response to recognition or reward. Queen Alira observed him from her private balcony. She realized that while many species relied on aggression, intimidation, or ceremony to maintain order, this human relied on observation, patience, and strategic action. In a single day, he had prevented multiple crises, preserved the dignity of the court, and demonstrated the hidden strengths of his species. The Queen reflected that perhaps the future of her court, and of the Dominion itself, could benefit from understanding humanity more deeply. Their approach was subtle, deliberate, and unexpectedly powerful. While many aliens dismissed humans as weak or emotional, the human guard had shown that true strength often lies in the quiet, controlled presence of one who acts when it matters most. The day ended, and the human guard returned to his post without celebration, without comment, and without fanfare. Yet his actions had reshaped the court in ways that would not be fully understood for years. He had proven that being silent did not mean being powerless. and that careful observation and decisive action could protect not just one, but many. In the quiet moments after the assembly, the Queen watched him from above. She realized that the events of the day had changed her perspective on strength, leadership, and the hidden value of humanity. And though he did not know it, the Human Guard had begun to redefine what it meant to serve, protect, and influence in the most complex court in the galaxy. The Palace of Valerian seemed almost alive in the late hours. Soft light shimmered across crystal floors, casting long reflections that danced like silent witnesses. Outside, the city glowed with energy from thousands of starships, each representing a distant world, each carrying its own ambitions and desires. Within the palace, the court settled into a fragile calm after the grand assembly. Alliances were secured for now. Disputes had been diffused, and the Human Guard remained as steady as ever. Observing silently, aware of every nuance and shadow, Queen Alira had not left her chambers since the assembly ended. She remained on her throne, thinking about the human who had quietly prevented disaster throughout the day. She knew that his actions had saved the court from embarrassment, preserved interstellar treaties, and ensured the safety of every delegate present. And she knew something more. His strength was not obvious, not loud, and yet it was the kind of strength that changed outcomes in ways that rulers like her could only admire silently. The human continued his patrols, methodical and calm, but his mind was never idle. He had observed subtle patterns in the palace all day. Movements that were slightly out of place, conversations that hinted at hidden motives, and the faint traces of unusual activity that suggested someone still sought to challenge the court's stability. His senses, honed from years of experience across multiple systems, caught what others could not see, and he prepared, as always, for what might come next. It began in the quietest moment of the night. A faint vibration in the floor beneath the central chamber alerted him. Others might have ignored it as the natural hum of the palace, but the human recognized it as the first sign of coordinated interference. He moved swiftly, yet without drawing attention. Step by step, he approached the source, eyes scanning every shadow, ears tuned to every sound. A figure moved along the outer corridors with silent precision, carrying a device that could disrupt the entire palace's security systems. If successful, the figure could cause panic during the night, potentially harming delegates and compromising the Queen's authority. Most guards would have panicked, drawn weapons, and risked exposing the threat to public view. The human, however, analyzed the scenario with calm clarity. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. He understood that every action mattered, and that timing, observation, and precision were more powerful than force alone. He intercepted the intruder in a shadowed corridor, placing himself between the figure and the central chamber. The intruder froze instantly. There was no anger, no aggression, only an undeniable presence that left no room for resistance. The human's posture was firm but unthreatening. His eyes, steady and unyielding, communicated authority that words could never convey. Within moments, the intruder surrendered quietly, leaving the device behind without a struggle. At the same time, in the main chamber, Queen Alaria sensed the subtle shift in energy. She realized that something significant was occurring, but she could not see it. Without hesitation, she left her throne and moved toward the corridor where the human had positioned himself. She had trusted him throughout the day, but now she wanted to witness his skill firsthand. When she arrived, she saw the intruder restrained and the device safely neutralized. The human stood as he had all day, calm, observant, and prepared. He had acted decisively without creating panic, without causing harm, and without seeking attention. For the Queen, this moment crystallized the essence of his abilities. Humans, she realized, were capable of subtle heroism, of actions that could protect and influence entire systems without drama or force. His silence had been his strength, his patience his weapon, and his focus his shield. The Queen approached him quietly. "You have done what others could not," she said. Her voice held admiration, tempered by respect for his restraint. "The court, the assembly, and even I have seen only part of what you have accomplished. You have protected, not just me, but the entire Dominion." The human bowed slightly. "I did only what my duty required," he said simply. There was no boast, no pride, only clarity in his words.
"You are more than a guard," the Queen continued.
"You are a strategist, a protector, and a force of calm in a sea of chaos. Your actions today will be remembered long after this night. You have shown us what humanity can truly offer." As she spoke, other nobles and attendants began to gather. They had followed her instinct, arriving silently to see what had drawn her away from her throne. When they saw the human, they understood, slowly, hesitantly, that this one figure had quietly altered the course of events. Whispers spread. A human, quiet and unassuming, had prevented multiple crises, diffused conflict, and preserved the stability of the court. Many had never thought humans capable of such composure and insight. The Queen turned to address the gathering. "Today we witness the strength of calm, the power of observation, and the courage to act with precision. We saw these qualities in a human guard, who reminds us that leadership is not always loud, that strength is not always visible, and that true influence often comes from those who act when it matters most." The nobles were stunned. Some bowed in respect. Others remained silent, processing the revelation. The human, meanwhile, remained quiet, his attention already returning to the subtle details around him. His focus had never been on recognition, only on ensuring that the court, the Queen, and the assembly were safe. In the following hours, the Queen began to implement changes inspired by the human's methods. Security protocols were revised to allow for observation and subtle intervention. Training programs were adjusted to emphasize awareness and patience rather than aggression and display. She encouraged dialogue that valued calm analysis over dramatic rhetoric, and she began to consult the human guard for insight into situations that required more than brute force or conventional strategy. For the human, these changes were not remarkable. He had always believed in the effectiveness of observation, the importance of patience, and the power of acting decisively yet carefully. What mattered most was that the court remained stable and that no harm came to those he was assigned to protect. Recognition was irrelevant, even when it was offered. As the night deepened, Queen Alira remained in her chambers, reflecting on what she had witnessed. She realized that the human's influence extended beyond simple acts of protection. He had demonstrated an alternative form of power, one rooted in calm, insight, and responsibility. It was a model that challenged everything the court had believed about strength, leadership, and diplomacy. Humans, she thought, might yet teach the Dominion lessons that centuries of tradition had overlooked. Meanwhile, the human returned to his patrols, scanning corridors, observing reflections, listening to subtle shifts in sound and vibration. The threats of the day had been neutralized, but he understood that vigilance was ongoing. In the quiet moments between movement, he considered the court, the Queen, and the delicate web of alliances that relied on calm judgment and timely action. His mind remained alert, yet clear, aware that preparation and patience were as powerful as any weapon.
In the early hours of morning, the first delegates of the day began to arrive, unaware of the previous night's near disruptions.
Security remained seamless. No alarms had been raised, no panic occurred, and the human's presence ensured that all continued smoothly. Queen Alira observed from her chambers, knowing that the Dominion had witnessed something extraordinary, even if the majority would never fully comprehend it. One human, quiet, disciplined, and observant, had preserved stability, protected life, and influenced the course of events without a single dramatic gesture. As the day broke over Valerian, the palace shimmered in golden light. The human guard continued his rounds, calm and composed. The Queen watched him from her balcony, understanding that true strength was often hidden in silence, patience, and quiet vigilance. Humanity, she realized, was not weak, emotional, or insignificant. It was precise, adaptable, and capable of heroism that surpassed spectacle. The court, the assembly, and perhaps even the Dominion itself, had been saved by the subtle brilliance of one silent human who had chosen observation, wisdom, and action over show. The story of that night would not be forgotten, though many would not know the full truth. The human remained humble, vigilant, and devoted to his duty. A silent protector whose quiet strength reshaped the court, challenged assumptions, and revealed the true power of humanity. The Queen, for her part, would never again underestimate what a human could accomplish. She understood in that moment that sometimes the greatest influence comes not from words or weapons, but from steady observation, timely action, and an unwavering sense of duty. And so the silent human guard continued his watch, not for glory, not for recognition, but for the preservation of peace, the safety of others, and the quiet demonstration that humanity's true strength lay not in noise or display, but in wisdom, patience, and courage. His presence alone began to redefine the court's understanding of power, inspiring a new era in the Dominion where strength could be subtle, influence could be quiet, and humanity could be a force no one had expected.